Hey everyone, I am Ian Plant, your host of Photo Masters Live. So glad that you could join us today. And today we are joined by my very good friend and professional colleague, professional landscape photographer, Erez Marom, coming all the way from Israel. Erez, say hi to everyone.
Hi everyone, very nice to have you guys. I'm very nice to have this nice attendance, and I'm very, very happy that so many people are interested in shooting volcanoes.
Well, I think everyone's interested in shooting volcanoes. I think the trick is figuring out how to find an active volcano and how to properly photograph it. And we'll get in all of that today during our free webinar. So you might recognize Erez from some of my photo adventure videos. So you probably saw him before in my Argentina solar eclipse video and also my Greenland iceberg video. I have to be very careful when I say that, because when we filmed the video, I was saying what was I saying?
Iceland's in Greenberg.
Greenberg's in ice? No.
Well, Iceland's in Greenberg.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, so for some reason, my brain flips those two. Greenland icebergs. And so Erez was in both of those videos with me. Those were some great photo adventures. As a matter of fact, Erez and I do a lot of photo travel together. We were recently in Ireland together for what was arguably the worst weather I've ever experienced on a photo trip.
Oh, that was not close to the worst weather I've had on a photo trip. Not even
well, maybe
close.
It's the worst weather the two of us have had together.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah, that was pretty bad. It was gloomy and wet and rainy constantly while we were there in Ireland.
Senja was close to this.
Oh, wait, that's right. When we were there in Senja, the entire time it rained. I think we had one night where we got some great sunset light, but we didn't think it was going to happen. And so we had started hiking away from where we were. And we turned around and there was this amazing sunset going on. And then it disappeared.
It was miserable.
Yeah, that was pretty bad.
On other occasions, we had amazing weather. So.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Well, we're planning a trip to Madagascar later on this summer. And so we're hoping to get some very good weather while we're there. There won't be any volcanoes there, unfortunately.
No.
Yeah, I've double checked. There are no active volcanoes.
Yeah, no. There's going to be a lot of beautiful landscape and even better wildlife.
Yeah, definitely. It's going to be an amazing trip, and I can't wait to film a video while we're there and share it with everyone. So as everyone comes in, if they'd like to leave any questions they have in the chat, that would be great. And also answer our poll about whether you've ever photographed a live volcano. Oh, we do have someone who said that they were afraid of the liquid hot magma. So hopefully while we talk about volcano photography, we can lay that fear to rest. And so why don't we dive in? I'll keep an eye on the chat to see if any questions come up. But we have prepared a little presentation with some of our volcano photos from around the world. Both Erez and I have actually photographed like a half dozen volcanoes each. And we've photographed some of the same volcanoes, but we've also photographed different volcanoes. So between the two of us, I think we've got about 10 volcanoes that we photographed around the world.
Absolutely.
Yeah, why don't you start us off, Erez, with this volcano?
Well, this is very recently. This is last year in the Iceland Fagradalsfjall volcano. I hope I haven't.
Can you say that again?
Sure, Fagradalsfjall.
That's amazing. You actually got that correct, I think.
It took me a while to learn how to say that.
Can you say it 5 times fast?
I can, but I won't. Let me tell about this shot. I think people are more interested in me telling about this shot.
Okay, so, if you insist.
Yeah, the volcano was super special. I mean, first of all, it was super approachable and accessible. I mean, basically, you had to do a 1 hour or 1.5 hour drive from Reykjavik to the parking lot. And from the parking lot, it's about an hour and a half, depending on your fitness level, to get to the actual eruption. And the eruption lasted a long time. And I was there starting, I think, early April. It erupted, the first vent erupted March 19th, if I'm not mistaken. And then I went there around the beginning of April, and there was still that one vent. And I went there, my first trip there was when there was only the one double cone, which you can't see in this shot. And then a few days later, another fissure erupted, another one. And by the time I was done with the trip, there were 8 fissures erupting at the same time. And this image shows fissure number 2, the second one that erupted. It erupted on the highest altitude erupting place in the volcano. And that day, we had a crazy snowstorm. We walked all the way to the volcano in blistering snow and winds. And we were very pessimistic about our chances of shooting the volcano. But then we arrived and the snow stopped. And we had a beautiful setting of this crazy erupting volcano with all the background and all the surrounding, basically in heavy snow, which really upgraded the shot, in my opinion. And here you can see a very beautiful example of the diversity that volcano shooting can give you. First of all, this is, of course, a drone shot. I didn't fly up in the air 100, 200 meters to shoot this image. But I set my drone, and the drone actually enabled me to view the numerous different layers of this natural occurrence. First of all, you have the actual fissure, there is a cone, and if you look well, you can see there are 2 eruptions inside that one little fissure, as indicated by those 2 brighter spots. And then there's the cone itself, and from the fissure, from the cone, a river of lava fell and created this pool. The place right below the eruption in the image is actually a lava pool full of liquid hot magma or lava. And the top is basically crust, but when the crust moves due to the lava flowing, you get those beautiful cracks, and those cracks show what's underneath. And what's underneath is that very beautiful red-yellow lava. And then after the lava pool, you can see that it's overflowing and creating different lava rivers in all directions, which was extremely beautiful and special. And after that, there's the hardened lava, the black area. And beyond that, there is snow, where the lava hasn't reached, and the heat from the lava hasn't melted the snow yet. And if you look really well, on the bottom left, you can see a group of people warming themselves in the freshly erupted lava.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to see, but there's a bunch of dots down there. And those are people who are getting really close to the lava flows. And so I think there's a few safety lessons here. So first of all, if you want to enhance your personal safety while photographing an active volcano, flying a drone is a great idea, because, you know, it really sucks when a drone gets caught in liquid hot magma, but it's much better than having your own person caught in liquid hot magma. So it's a safer way of getting the photos. But second of all, a lot of places where you can photograph lava or volcanoes, there are safe ways to approach it. So for example, when the surface flows are active in Hawaii on the Big Island, then you can often get very close to the lava flows. It's something that people do all the time, and it's actually perfectly safe as long as you're with a guide. And so when the Iceland volcano was erupting, it was the same thing. In the early days of the eruption, people were able to get pretty close to the lava very safely. You know, there's all sorts of videos from both Hawaii and Iceland of people cooking hot dogs on the magma and things like that. So you actually can get close if there are safety officials there who are monitoring, if the scientists understand the course of the eruption. A lot of times the flows are rather predictable and actually quite safe. And lava typically moves very slowly as it goes down over the landscape. You can easily outwalk a flow of lava. So it's not nearly as dangerous as you might think it is. You know, the dangers come from those really big, fast explosions. And it's usually not the lava itself that's the dangerous part for people. It's the other stuff, all the ash that might come down, that might come hurtling down at supersonic speeds.
The gases are a dangerous factor. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
This volcano was very well monitored with a lot of officials next to it, And these people, monitored the visitors, the tourists, and when someone went too close to the volcano, or when they got noticed that the gas level was getting dangerously high, they would tell people to move back.
We have a question from Mark, who asks if there are any. Sorry, just let me interrupt for a second. We have a question from Mark about whether there are restrictions on using drones in Iceland. He's going to be going there in October, and there are some places where you can't fly drones. Typically, they're marked. And, also like national park areas within Iceland, you're not supposed to fly drones. And there's also a limit to how high you can fly. Very similar, to the U.S. It's somewhere around 400 feet or so above the ground. But other than that, yeah. So other than that, though, there's a lot of places in Iceland where you can fly drones, and the drone flying there is amazing.
Absolutely. It's crazy.
So, Erez,
I've flown my drone in many locations in Iceland. For example, this volcano, which was amazing, but also other places. And I love shooting with my drone. It gives you a different perspective. It shows you the landscape as it is. You are not restricted to the ground. When you're stuck on the ground, mountains can be distorted just because of your perspective and point of view. But if you look at the landscape from above, you are far enough from it, and the differences in distance to the different points on the subject are negligible. So you see it like it is.
Yeah, definitely. I find that my drone photography complements my land-based landscape photography. So usually the days that are really good for the land-based photography, they're not so good for the drone, and vice versa. So I find that the two are rarely in competition with each other. They complement each other. They extend my shooting range and my ability to capture fast-moving, fleeting light. And also the drone is a great thing to have when you're photographing something like an active volcano. And this is the second shot from the Iceland volcano. Just tell us a little bit more about this, Erez.
Yeah, this is actually a very good example to what you were talking about, because usually I find that I totally agree with you. When you're shooting with a camera, you don't want to be shooting with a drone and vice versa. But here, I was racing to shoot both with my camera and with my drone. But the shots with the camera and with the drone look completely different. Absolutely different, because with the camera, you can get very, very close to the foreground. You can get a classic foreground-background shot with the beautiful flowing lava in the foreground and one of the fissures in the background. And with the drone, you can get something absolutely different. For example, this shot is a panorama. Actually, with the drone, if I'm not mistaken, it's a 2-row panorama. And you can see the lava pool that we saw on the previous shot, just way, way closer, and that same fissure. But you can also see much more detail in the cracks and in the crust on the pool in the foreground, and you can see 2 other fissures in the background. If you look very well, you can see the one that looks like a tiny bump that was erupting every few minutes or every 10 seconds with little explosions of lava. And in the far background, you can see the original double cone that was the first to erupt.
Yeah, it's really an amazing shot. And, Erez was talking about shooting both from the land and from the drone. So I was there to photograph the volcano twice. I was there after that initial eruption. So I think when Erez was there, things were a lot more active. And since then, the activity has quieted down. I don't think there's been any activity for a few months now with that volcano. But this is a shot that I took from the land. It was really exciting being there. And if you check out my Iceland volcano adventure video that I shot with my good friend Joseph Roybal, you can see the activity and how close we were to the volcano. We were on a hill that was just a few hundred meters away from the volcano watching it. It was so close you could feel the heat from the volcano. And it was just an amazing spectacle. And so this is one of the shots I took with my land camera. I call it my land camera now because I shoot with my drone so often. And I also did a number of drone shots.
Amazing shot, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. I think Ares has got better volcano luck than I do. His volcano shots are really astonishing, and the volcanoes that we have both visited, that are the same volcanoes, he has always had better conditions than I have. So I'm always very jealous when I look at Ares's photos.
You have
Here's another
much better
shot.
bear luck.
Yeah. And, for these shots, I think it's important that no matter what you're photographing, that you don't get too enamored with your subject, that you still think about the fundamentals of good composition and working with light, and your subject just becomes part of the overall compositional design. So I was working very hard, as Ares does, to create some interesting compositions with the volcano. So the volcano is in the shot, but it's really not what the shot's all about. The shot's really more about the visual design, all the shapes that are formed by the landscape and by the clouds working together. And another thing that I really like doing.
This is a regular landscape shot, an amazing shot, but it is a very regular landscape shot. It just happens to be of a volcano.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Is that you're not doing anything different when you're photographing a volcano as you might be when you're. Yeah, I mean, you might be outrunning the lava when you're photographing the volcano, but artistically, it's kind of the same approach. And so one thing that the drone allowed me to do was to fly my drone right over the volcano. So the volcano would erupt for a few minutes, and then it would sort of quiet down, and the lava lake inside the crater of the volcano would pulsate, and basically the pressure would build up and it would erupt again. And it wasn't really on a predictable schedule, but you knew that right after an eruption, you'd have at least a few minutes where you could safely fly the drone over the volcano, over the lava lake looking down. And then once you started seeing the bubbling activity get more intense, you could fly the drone out of there. And that's what I did with this shot. And, one thing that I'm often thinking about when I'm photographing something like a volcano is how to mix the colors. So obviously the lava is bright red. And so I often try to shoot at twilight when there might be some of that blue hour light in the sky or some of that light reflecting down on the landscape below, because I'm looking to get that warm, cool color scheme. And that's what I did here. It was twilight. So there was a lot of blue light reflecting down on the landscape surrounding the lava lake. And that created this blue, red color cast, this warm, cool color cast, this complementary color scheme that I think really helped take this shot to the next level. And so, unfortunately, that volcano is no longer active, but there are a lot of volcanoes in Iceland. And over the years, Ares has photographed a few others. So tell us about this shot, which is, by the way, I absolutely love this photograph. I've always been very jealous of this.
For good reason. Yeah, I mean, what can I say? This is my favorite volcano shot that I've taken. It's just insane luck and a lot of persistence. This was the Baltarbunga volcano back in 2014, one of the first volcanoes I ever shot. And this trip was a whole affair. I got to Iceland, and then Iceland Air lost my luggage, and I had to buy all the equipment again. And getting someone to bring me there was a whole thing, and getting a permit to go there was a whole thing. And when I got there, we took a few shots of the volcano from land. And then I wanted to take a helicopter, and a helicopter was based very conveniently in a farm that was about 45 minutes flight to the actual eruption, which was gigantic. So I settled in that farm, and of course, the day I want to shoot it, a huge sandstorm comes and stays there for about 3 days. So I did nothing for 3 days other than eat lamb soup, which is fantastic, but you can only eat so much lamb soup in Iceland, and getting bored. But then the fourth day came, I told the pilot, listen, this looks amazing. When you shoot landscape for a while, you know how to recognize good sunset clouds. So these were looking amazing. So I told him, okay, we go tonight. It was we don't have a lot of time, so I won't tell the whole story. But I barely managed to find a partner for the very expensive flight, my good friend Daniel Hausman. And then we took the helicopter, flew there, And this lava flow was new, was brand new. The pilot told us it wasn't there 3 hours before or 2 hours before. So basically, I realized that this is something very special, and I had to use it as a foreground. And luckily, the sunset color began to build up. And like you did in the previous shot, this was a perfect balance of warm and cold colors and a very good balance of light, because there was just enough light to light the black ground, which is basically volcanic sand, and there was just enough light not to overexpose the liquid hot lava. And there's a very good balance of color and brightness here. And I think I told the helicopter pilot to go back to that scene about 3 or 4 or even 5 times just to make sure I had the shot, because I knew that that's the best shot from that shoot. We took about almost 2 hours flight, which was very expensive. But it was worth it. It was one of the most incredible experiences in my professional career and in my life.
Well, it's a great photo. I love the S-curve that leads you from foreground to background. And we have a question from John, which is, what is the safe distance to fly your drone above a volcano? So basically, how high do you need to fly so that the heat from the volcano isn't going to damage the drone? And that's going to depend on a number of factors, depending on how much lava there is, I suppose. I generally found that when I was like 100 feet above the magma, that it's very difficult to fly them because there's a lot of thermals rising from the heat. And so the drone is just sort of waving back and forth. It's hard to keep it in place. And also anything that's like rubber on your drone starts to react to the heat. So any rubber seals will start popping out and stuff like that. So 100 feet above the lava, probably too low. 200 feet or above is probably okay. Aris, what was your experience?
Hell no. Don't listen to Ian. He doesn't know what he's talking about. So, like Ian says, it differs greatly. I mean, in this shot from Iceland with the helicopter, we barely came close to being above that new lava flow, and the whole helicopter began trembling, and that was hundreds of meters above the lava. But in the newer Iceland volcano, my drone was a few meters above the volcano, and nothing happened. So basically, you really have to develop a sense for it. You have to know how hot the lava is, how big the volcano is. If there's a lot of lava, you can't get as close. And if there's not too much lava, or the lava is flowing in an opposite direction to the drone, you can get very close. I mean, the worst thing that could happen is you lose the drone. I mean, for me, I was flying in Hawaii very close to the lava. I got amazing shots I'm very happy with, and the drone camera melted.
Yeah. So
I got the drone back. So
right. So if you're dealing with smaller breakout flows like in Hawaii, you could definitely get a bit closer. But yeah, I mean, I was doing some drone photography in Hawaii where I was maybe 30 or 40 feet above the lava, and I had the lubrication fluid inside the camera gimbal start to spill out onto the lens, and I had my micro SD card actually popped out of the drone because of the heat. So yeah, definitely you start getting some problems when you get that low.
Did you lose the card?
Yeah, I did completely. Luckily, I was with a guide who took me out to the flows, and he had a GoPro with him, so he let me borrow his card for the GoPro, and I was able to keep shooting. And luckily, I hadn't shot anything yet with it. The card that I lost, I only had like 3 or 4 shots on it. So, yeah.
That's
and
lucky.
This is another view from that volcano, and this is also a helicopter view, I take it. But I love how you've got the volcano in the foreground and then the lava river flowing to the background. It's a really riveting image.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it's also probably one of my favorite shots from that volcano. Mm-hmm. The lava river was absolutely mesmerizing, and I was going around asking the helicopter pilot to fly around just to see what I can do with that river. and how to compose it well. And just to show the winding river, I couldn't do that from where I shot the previous shot because that was above the lava and the helicopter couldn't fly there.
Yeah.
So we went around, and this actually looked very good. This was one of the last shots I took. It was getting very dark, and we had to go back. Unfortunately, there was very large contrast in the shot. So this is actually an HDR shot. I took 2 shots at very close times and at different brightnesses, different brightness levels, and managed to compose this not perfect but almost perfect HDR, showing the lava in good detail and some detail in the other places in the shot. And yeah, I mean, what's good about this shot is the composition, the fact that it shows the eruption and the river, and the fact that it has both. Yeah.
Yeah, Erez, sorry, we have things are breaking up a little bit, but I think we're back. So, Erez, I think we missed a little bit of what you were saying, but you're talking about this being an HDR image, which actually dovetails perfectly with a question from Leslie, who wanted us to share a little bit about our processing workflow. And so I think the key challenge is, like, obviously we could talk a lot about processing, but I think there's a few specific challenges with volcanoes. First of all, the lava is very, very bright, and it's also red. And so the red channel, digital cameras often have a tough time handling that red channel. And so definitely when you're making your exposures, you want to be very careful not to overexpose the lava itself. So that's why shooting at twilight is often good, because it allows you to get some of the ambient light that is in the clouds in the landscape. It balances the exposure with that bright lava. And so you want to make sure you're not overexposing the lava. And then a lot of what we do when we're processing these files is just to tame those bright red highlights to make sure that we're revealing the color of the lava as seen by the eye. So often with the raw files, they look very bright, almost overexposed. And so usually using the highlight slider to bring those highlights down and to restore them to their proper exposure level and to make them look colorful. And then also we're probably bringing up the shadows. Erez just mentioned doing a multiple exposure blend, an HDR blend, so that you can have more detail in the shadows, or you can just bring up the shadow detail if you've got enough of it in the raw file. And so doing that to balance the exposure between the bright areas and the dark areas of the shot are very important. But we don't want to go too much into processing right now, because that's a rabbit hole that we'll never recover from. So those were volcanoes from Iceland. And I don't think there's any volcanic activity going on right now, but they say in Iceland, if you don't like what the volcanoes are doing, just wait 15 minutes. It's only a matter of time before something else erupts in Iceland. But now we're moving to Africa.
There's news about, sorry for breaking you, but
go ahead.
There is speculation about a volcano erupting soon, not very far from Fagradalsfjall, but more closer to the inhabited areas. So that might be a little dangerous. They're monitoring it very closely. Let's hope nothing very bad happens. But with some luck, no one will get hurt, and no one's house will get engulfed by lava. But we will have a very photogenic volcano, hopefully.
Well, let's definitely monitor the situation, and if it does happen and it's safe to go there, you can bet that Erez and I will be there. So moving on to Africa, which has got a number of active volcanoes, and if we can kind of speed things up a little bit so we don't run out of time here. This is the volcano in Ethiopia. Its name is Erda Ale, and both Erez and I have been there.
Yeah, Erda Ale is awesome. I mean, it's in the Danakil Depression, which is a very volcanic area. It's a place where 2 tectonic plates are being ripped apart. So it's very low and volcanic. I was there at the workshop, actually, I think 2 years ago. And we got a beautiful show. Nowadays, I think the lava pool is actually full. But back when I was there, it was basically a gigantic shaft, about 70 meters in diameter and 120 meters, about 400 feet in height. And in the bottom of that shaft, there were intermittent flows of lava. And on the sunrise of our second day there was a beautiful eruption. You can see some lava erupting from the top of this cone and some rivers of lava erupting from its side. It was a very nice spectacle.
Was this a land shot or a drone shot?
Yeah, land shot. Yeah.
Land shot.
I actually took my drone down into that pit at some point, but the land cam shot turned out better.
Yeah. So when I was there, so Erdale is one of the few sort of persistent active lava lakes in the world. And when I was there, the lava levels were a lot lower. And so it wasn't nearly as dynamic as the times that Erez has been there. And I had a drone with me for my Ethiopia trip, but I had crashed it a week earlier and lost it. And so I wasn't able to do any drone photography, which was a real shame. But sometimes you can get some really interesting features. You know, as the lava levels change with a volcano, it's kind of like being on the coast working with the tide. As the tide level changes, certain things are obscured or revealed. And so when I was there and the lava lake was lower and less active, there was this feature revealed that the locals were calling the Gates of Hell, which is featured in this photograph. And it was basically just a twin pair of vents that had some glowing magma on the inside and smoke coming out of it. So it was kind of an interesting and evocative storytelling shot that I was able to take. So going just a little farther south from Ethiopia in the Congo is one of the best persistent lava lakes in the world, which is Nyiragongo volcano. And this is an amazing volcano. This persistent lava lake has been active for about 40 or 50 years. And every few years, it has a massive eruption. It's actually really dangerous to the local inhabitants. But when it's not in the middle of a massive eruption, it's a very predictable, safe place to go and photograph the lava lake. And this is a view from the top of the crater looking down. This is a wide angle view, an ultra wide angle perspective, 11 millimeters on a full frame camera. And so that gives you kind of a sense of the scale, because the lava lake is several hundred feet away. And even though there's this ultra wide perspective, it still looks pretty big. It's actually quite massive, and it's just an amazing sight when you're up in the crater looking down. But it's difficult to get there because, first of all, the Congo is politically and socially unstable, and there's been a lot of civic unrest and violence there in the past few decades, one of the worst conflict zones on the planet. And so every now and then, the border areas where the volcano is might get safe enough to open up for tourists, and then they have to close things down again because there's some sort of incident involving local militia groups or something like that. So trying to time your entry for one of those safe times can be a little bit difficult. And then you've got to hike all the way to the top of the volcano, which is like a 5,000 foot vertical ascent gain. You can hire porters to bring your gear up, and you camp on top of the volcano. They've got these huts up there on the crater rim. So it's an amazing experience because you go out there at sunset, and as it gets dark, you can see more and more of the lava lake down below. And it is just one of the most fantastically beautiful things.
It's my turn to be jealous.
Yes. Just watching the fractal patterns of the lava lake constantly in motion, constantly churning. I did a lot of photography at night. But I also tried to do some shots at twilight, and I took a wide angle zoom, but also a telephoto zoom. And so I was zooming into 400 millimeters to capture these fractal patterns that were emerging from the lava just churning around the lake. And tried all sorts of different shots, shot at sunrise and sunset during the twilight to get that mix of colors. It really is one of the most amazing places I've ever been, one of the most amazing personal experiences I've ever had. And I can't wait to go back. Erez and I, someday, we're going to go back there and film a photo adventure. And this time, I'm going to bring my drone. I'm just going to pause a little bit for some shameless self-promotion. If you want to learn more about photography, if you want to take your photography to the next level, then consider signing up for my new subscription service, PhotoMasters Pro. There's a monthly and an annual option. And it gives you access to a bunch of my premium photography courses, like my Ultimate Landscape Photography course, my Ultimate Photography Composition course, which is the best composition course ever made. And then I've got some new courses showing my digital processing workflow. And I've just launched a new channel called the Digital Processing Channel. So as I travel around the world and I make new photos, I show you how I process them from start to finish. So it's something that's going to be constantly updated. So definitely go to photomasters.com and check out Pro. It is a new service and it's a growing service, but definitely I'm working very hard to add new videos every few weeks. And so the value of your membership will continue to grow as I build out this exciting new service. So going from Africa, we're going to head on over to Asia, which has got a lot of volcanoes, many of them in the beautiful country of Indonesia. Aris, why don't you tell me a little bit about this volcano and also tell us about your exciting Indonesia photo tour that you've got planned for next May.
Yeah, Indonesia is amazing. I don't need to tell you, but I will tell our listeners that it's one of the best places for nature photography that I've visited in my life. It has so much to see and so much to photograph, both wildlife and landscapes. Since we're doing a talk about volcanoes, I'm going to mention that there are tens or even hundreds of active volcanoes in Indonesia, perhaps even more than that. Sorry for not doing my homework. But there are several very famous and very photogenic ones. And this is maybe one of the most famous for sure. It's called Mount Bromo. Bromo is the one erupting in the background. The one in the foreground is another extinct volcano. This is a drone shot. Of course, there is a platform from which you can photograph the very known or regular composition of Bromo. But then you can just send the drone and get something very nice and original. And with my volcano luck, luckily, the volcano was erupting for me. When it's not erupting, you can actually take a car and drive all the way and take a hike on the crater rim. But of course, not when it's erupting. But when it's erupting, you have, of course, another dimension to the composition. It's not just the extinct volcano in the foreground and another volcano in the background and the beautiful layers. It's also something of different color, different texture, different brightness, and something that is dynamic. The eruption, the smoke, the ash from the eruption. So this is a very beautiful volcano, 100 times better when it's erupting, but it's also very beautiful when it's not erupting.
All right, we had a question about where you can see more of Aris's work, and I put his website, arismarome.com. The link is in the chat, so definitely check out Aris, his work, and his upcoming photo tours. We also had a question about when you're shooting with a land camera, what is the usual shutter speed for photographing a volcano and whether it's better to use a tripod or handheld. I think a tripod's a good option because you can definitely do longer shutter speeds. So if there is magma flying in the sky, you might want to use a shorter shutter speed to freeze the action of it. So 1/30th of a second or higher definitely will be enough to freeze the action of the magma going into the air. But sometimes you actually want to do a longer exposure. And I'm going to show you some photos that I took in Vanuatu of Yasar volcano, where it explodes every few minutes and magma goes shooting into the air. And I was doing 8 or 15-second exposures to have the magma appear as streaking arcs of color. So I think a tripod is always a good idea when you're doing any type of landscape photography, and having one for volcanoes will give you many more options. And there was also a question about...
one more thing I want to add.
Yeah.
Sometimes using a tripod is not possible. For example, a lot of the people around chat mentioned shooting in Hawaii Volcanoes National Park. And one of the options to shoot Kilauea Volcano is taking a boat sail there. So on the boat, you obviously can't, or you don't want to use a tripod. It won't help you. So basically, you have to use high ISO and high shutter speed. So it really depends on the specific case and what you're trying to achieve. If you're trying to show the motion of the lava with a long exposure, of course you have to use a tripod. If you're in some sort of circumstance where you can't use a tripod, you have to manage the parameters according to that.
Yeah, and if you're shooting handheld, it'll depend on what focal length you're using. If you're using a longer focal length, you'll need a faster shutter speed to avoid having camera shake. So if you're shooting with a 500 millimeter lens handheld, the rule of thumb is typically to shoot at 1/500th of a second or higher to avoid any camera shake. Image stabilization can help you get the same shot with a slightly longer shutter speed, but that's roughly where you want to be. And there was also questionnaires about what do we do with our volcano photos? Do we sell them to photo stock agencies?
Well, I don't.
We're laughing because there's not a lot of photographers that are actually using photo stock agencies anymore because you can make barely nothing from the photo stock agencies. But that's a topic for another day.
I've never sold anything to stock agencies. If I sell photos, it's directly. And otherwise, my income comes from guiding. So I use these shots for my own personal enjoyment and to market my photo workshops. For example, both Bromo volcano and this volcano in the image right here, which is called Kawaijan, are going to be shot in my upcoming Indonesia workshop next May. In May 2023, I'm going to do a 3-week-long Indonesia workshop, and we're going to visit not one, not two, but at least four volcanoes: Bromo, Kawaijan, Kelimutu, and Anak Krakatau. And these are all very different and very fascinating. So
and Ijen is very different from other volcanoes because it isn't spewing out lava. Instead, it is releasing sulfur gas, which at night looks like purple lights.
Yeah, it burns purple.
Yeah.
So you basically start the hike to Ijen crater or Kawaijan at about 1 a.m. You probably need a Red Bull or two to fuel you up. But if you're well rested and you've had a few coffees, it's not a big deal. It's about 1 hour, 1.5 hours to go up if you're making good time. And then it's about 20 minutes to go down into the crater. And once you're in the crater, you can get quite close, depending on the gas situation. You can get quite close to the place where the gases are being emitted and to the purple fire. And that is absolutely fascinating. And Ian, you also tend to shoot more people than I do, so you have some shots of the miners there.
Yeah,
that is also a very interesting story.
The purple fire of Ijen volcano is incredible. Unfortunately, when I was there, the purple fire was not quite as active. But so photographers have recently discovered Ijen, but other people have known about Ijen for a while. And in fact, there has been sulfur mining going on there for a very, very long time. And you get these miners that climb up and they will just hack the sulfur out of the ground. And they will do it at night because it's too hot during the day. And so they hike all the way up to the top. They spend like an hour or so just hacking the sulfur rock out, fill up these giant baskets with about 200 pounds of rock, and then climb up to the top of the crater and bring it all the way down by themselves. And then they do this several times in a night. It is some of the most backbreaking work you can imagine. So the first shot was Erez's shot. This is one of my shots showing some of the purple flame in the background and one of the miners in the foreground. And it is really fascinating work. And so you go up there at night, and then it transitions to twilight and then sunrise. And then during the daylight hours before you head back, you can work with the miners and photograph them as they go about doing their job. And so, this guy is carrying these baskets of rocks. He looks like he's on a fun weekend jaunt, but that's 200 pounds of rock. I tried to lift it. It's not easy to do. This is very challenging. And these men are probably a foot shorter than myself or Erez. So that just gives you some context as to how difficult this is. They're a lot smaller than the average American, yet they're carrying loads that the average American can't even possibly imagine carrying. So it really is back-breaking work. It's very dangerous work, but it's just an amazing place, and it's beautiful. And this is a shot from Erez showing the crater of Ijen volcano from above in the morning. This is a drone shot.
Absolutely. And in this shot, you can actually see 5 volcanoes. The Ijen crater is part of an absolutely gigantic volcanic complex of antiquity. And here you can basically see the contrast between the very toxic inside of Kawa Ijen. You can see the gray earth and the turquoise, very, very high acidity, huge lake, and the volcanic gases, and basically the lush green surrounding on the extinct volcanoes. And I love this shot because when you take a drone very high up, you can really see the landscape, the vast landscape as it is. I mean, not just the specific volcano you're shooting, but the general context of it. You can see the different volcanoes in that volcanic complex. You can see the different colors. You can see that it's toxic inside and very lush outside. You can see the sunrise color. You can see the shadows. Actually, you can see that the Ijen in the foreground is half in shadow. That's because behind me there was another huge volcano. So you can see a lot of context, and you can see everything there is to see.
Yeah, so this is really one of the most amazing places to photograph. I mean, Indonesia is just incredible. It's got a diversity of photographic subjects that you don't find in any place. And it really is great. And visiting these volcanoes in Ijen and also Bromo and some of the others on Aris's tour is a really great way to get some volcano photographs under your belt. And we're going to move on from Asia to Oceania, or I guess, some people call it the continent of Oceania. Other people just refer to it as the islands of the Pacific. But this is from the island nation of Vanuatu, which I was fortunate enough to visit several years ago. And this is one of the other really persistently active volcanoes in the world. It's a very reliably active volcano. As a matter of fact, there's a whole tourist operation that is there that brings people up every night and every morning to see the volcano. And you go up there in the evening at about sunset, and then you stay through the twilight and into the dark, and you kind of do the reverse at sunrise. And it's amazing. It's a little bit different than, for example, Nyiragongo in the Congo or Erta Ale in Ethiopia. Those are lava lakes. So there really isn't a lava lake here. There are these two craters at the very bottom, or these two like lava pools, or maybe more, depending on, activity is constantly changing with these volcanoes. When I was there, there were these two little pools at the bottom of the crater that had a little bit of lava in them. And every few minutes, the pressure would build up, and then lava would just come shooting straight up out of these pools into the air for hundreds and hundreds of meters. So there are all these car-sized magma bombs just going through the air. And I was doing long exposures of 8 seconds to 15 seconds to capture these magma bombs as streaking arcs of light and color. And the first shot was land-based. This is a drone shot. I flew my drone way above the crater looking down, so you can see the two twin lava pools at the bottom. There's actually a third smaller one down there as well. And they look like evil eyes. I mean, this volcano to me from above looks like some sort of evil creature with a big wide grin on its face. And it really is an amazing sight. And this was a really incredible adventure because Vanuatu is really quite different from most tourist destinations around the world. And it was an adventure just getting there, flying halfway around the world, and then going out to one of the islands within the island chain to visit this volcano. I mean, I really felt like I had fallen off the face of the earth. I remember at one point I was staying at this little resort that was on the coast, and there was a hot spring that was in the water that you could get to at low tide. So I went out there, and I'm sitting there, and some of the local villagers came, and they were sitting in the hot spring with me, and they started talking with me, and they asked me where I was from, and I said I was from America, and they were shocked. They were used to getting some tourists from Australia, New Zealand, but not a lot of tourists from America. So they had all sorts of questions about what I was doing and my trip and what it was like living back at home. So it was just a really interesting experience. And here's a photograph of, basically I wanted to show some context here and create more of a story. And so I stepped back from the crater rim. There was a photographer who was standing on the crater rim, and I photographed him as my foreground with the volcano erupting in the background. And so there was just a lot of different possibilities. You could move along the crater rim to get different angles on the eruption. You could fly your drone there. So it was a lot of fun. And Aris and I actually had a South Pacific trip planned for 2.5 years ago, but that got derailed by the pandemic. So at some point we will go ahead. I guess it was about 2 years now ago. Yeah. So we will plan that trip again in the future, I think, because it's really an amazing place, the South Pacific. And then finally, we've only got a few minutes left, but finally, let's talk about North America. Probably the best place to photograph volcanoes in North America would be the big island of Hawaii. And its activity level varies. Sometimes it's erupting quite viciously. Other times it's very dormant. And so in the past few years, there's been a lot of activity back and forth. There was a really big eruption about a year or two ago there. And a few years ago, it had been...
It was 2018, actually.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And a few years back, it was completely quiet. And then it entered into this active period again. So both Aris and I were there in the past 5 years during this active period. And so this is a drone shot that you took, Aris.
Yeah, this is the drone shot where I melted my drone. It was a hell of an adventure. I mean, basically, we arrived in Hawaii, and the next day, we met with Eric, the guy that you recommended. Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And he was a really nice guy, great guy, and he took us there, and it was perfect. We arrived there in the afternoon, started shooting a little bit. It wasn't erupting like crazy. By the way, I did that trip with my good friend Daniel Hausman. Again, mm-hmm. The guy that I met first when we shot the Iceland volcano in 2014.
He's the guy with the good volcano luck, I'm guessing. It's not you, it's him.
I think, I don't know, it's something cosmic. Whenever we shoot together, something crazy happens. So, it might be the combination of our volcano luck.
Well, James has got a question. James has got a question that's relevant to this since you melted your drone. He asks, you take more than one drone with you, so you have a backup in the event of an accident. And yes, I typically do if I can. So when I went to photograph the volcano, I had 2 drones with me. And I did visit Iceland twice with those 2 drones. And on my second trip, I did actually lose one of my drones, but not to the volcano. I lost it to the sea.
Mm-hmm. I don't have a backup. I mean, I guess if we go to the South Pacific, I'll take a backup, or we take a mutual backup or something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
But
I mean, the drones are pretty stable. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. They're idiot-proof. Basically, you have to really try hard to make them go, to lose them nowadays.
Well, I don't know if they're idiot-proof. So when I was at the Iceland volcano, there actually was a woman who had to crash land her drone because she was flying it over the volcano, and it was very windy, so it was pushing her drone away from her, and she couldn't get it to come back because the thermals, the wind when it was passing through the lava area just picked up speed. And so she ended up having to crash land it like 2 miles away. And then she had a friend who was going to try to go out there to get it for her. So, it can happen that you lose your drone. So
yeah, it can. I mean, extreme circumstances can make you lose your drone, but they are much safer now than they were 10 years ago. I mean, I lost my first drone 10 years ago when I flew it, and the battery was too cold. There was no indication. It was in Iceland, and the battery was too cold, and I just flew it above the glacier lagoon, and it just fell and lost it. Now that wouldn't happen.
Yeah, it's a lot safer now. Well, we're running low on time, so I'm going to run through these last images really quick, and then we can offer some final thoughts and answer any final questions. This is one of Aris's drone shots where he almost melted his drone, and I just love these curving these twin channels of lava just interacting. And this is a shot that I took. Yeah. And this is a shot that I took with my drone, kind of a similar thing. A surface flow of lava was beneath me. And this is another one of those twilight shots where I had that mixture of that cool light on the landscape. And, this freshly cooled lava in Hawaii is very glassy. It's got a kind of a crystalline glass in it. So it reflects very well. So it can be really interesting because it takes on the color of the sky. And so tell us a little bit very quickly about this shot. This is not a drone shot. This is a land shot, Aris?
This is a land shot with a 7300 in Hawaii, actually taken without a tripod, just walking around. And this is, of course, an underexposure. The contrast is very strong because the crust was relatively thick. Because as you can see here, this is lava that's been condensed, and the crust had hardened quite thickly. So the contrast is very large. So in order not to blow the light, the bright areas, I had to underexpose. But when you have to underexpose, this also means that you can use very fast shutter speed. So I didn't need to use a tripod. So that was a very easy shot to get. Easy in technical terms. In terms of composition, it's required a little bit of thought. What I had in mind was getting the lava to look like ocean waves.
Yeah.
And actually, I named this shot Surf's Up because we're in Hawaii, but it's another kind of waves. Yeah,
and I just love the pattern here, the radial pattern. It almost looks like a bird's wing to me, which is really beautiful. And it's amazing how close you can get to the lava in Hawaii. I mean, I was so close that I could smell my boots burning, and I could also smell my arms burning. So you get this singe on your arms when you're too close. It's like a bad sunburn. So when you start smelling, something cooking and it smells good, remember that it's you that's cooking. You're what's for dinner. So it's time to move back. But yeah, I shot this with a wide angle lens. So I was really close to the lava in the foreground, and I had the storm in the background. So this is a twilight shot to get that cool, warm color mix. And this was just little bits of lava that was peeking out of the cracks in the rock. And also what the lava leaves behind. So after the lava cools and dries, it creates this fractured landscape with a lot of texture. And I use that texture for this wide angle shot. And in the background is actually not the volcano itself. It's the lava flowing into the ocean and releasing this plume of smoke and gas. And so I caught that at sunset. And, as Aris mentioned, you could also there's these boats that go out. And when the lava flows are flowing far enough to actually flow into the ocean, the boat is a great place to be to capture the lava flowing into the ocean. This is a shot that Aris took. We'll finish things off with a few shots that I took from the lava boat as well. I was fortunate enough to photograph the fire hose, I guess is what they called it, or the fire fall. Basically, it was like a 70-foot waterfall of lava that was flowing for a month or two. And it was just really amazing. It was just a constant flow of all this lava coming down. It was just an amazing sight to see. And this gives you some idea of the scale. That's a cliff in the background with some people on it. So this was about 70 or 80 feet of lava flowing into the ocean. And right after I made this photograph, within a day or two, the fire hose stopped flowing. So I was one of the last people to photograph it. So, volcanoes are ephemeral events. Some of them are persistent, and those are usually, they have some sort of tourist infrastructure around them. So those are a good place to start if you want to photograph a volcano. Also, there are volcanoes that suddenly become active and then become inactive. Some of them are in remote locations you can't get to. Others are in places where you can safely access the volcano. So it's a good idea to pay attention to some websites that are dedicated to volcanic activity. Check those out. We have one final question from Ronald. He asks, what drones do we recommend? I'm currently flying the Mavic 3 Pro, which is a really great drone, though it's a bit more expensive. Aris, what are you flying right now?
I'm flying the Mavic 2.
Okay.
It's still
Mavic 2
very
Pro.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mavic 2 Pro. I think I'm going to fly it until I lose it.
Right.
In some horrible accident.
Well, that's basically what happened to me. I lost my Mavic 2 Pro to the ocean in Iceland last year, so I replaced it with the Mavic 3. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. This has been a lot of fun, and thank you very much, Aris, for co-hosting this event. Those were some amazing images and amazing stories, and we will definitely have you again on the program sometime and in one of our future photo adventure videos. Everyone, Keep on the lookout for our Madagascar video adventure that we hopefully will have in a few months for you. Until then, thank you very much, everyone. Check out erasmarome.com. Follow the link in the chat. And also check out Photomasters Pro if you want to take your photography to the next level. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.